Okay, so my topic is pediatric fluorescein angiography, indications and interpretation. Disease pathologies often involve the retinal vasculature in children. An examination of the retina, especially the peripheral, is difficult and challenging, as we all know. The bright light of the indirect ophthalmoscope and scleral depression can be really intimidating for children. We know that imaging allows objective monitoring of disease pathology. So in this talk, I'll just give you an overview of platforms available for performing FFA in children, what are the doses commonly used, and just few examples of common indications for performing a fluorescein angiography. With the advent of the wide field and handheld imaging systems, really the imaging in very small and small children has undergone a paradigm shift. So this table just shows you the different platforms which are available for wide field and imaging of the children. Most of them are contact handheld. However, the Optos and the Spectralis and are the non-contact ones. The smartphone imaging can also be used, though the field of view is very variable in this. So these are the platforms where fluorescein angiography is available. We have the RedCam 3 and the Phoenix Icon, which are the handheld devices for use in very small preterm children. And then we have the Optos, and recently there is a device which is the Spectralis Flex, which has come with a C arm, because all the other devices are actually for children really at this time multimodality, wherein we have an integrated a camera, fluorescein, OCT, fluorescein, fundus autofluorescence is not widely available for very small children, preterms and infants. So the Spectralis Flex is one such device which has come. However, obviously the cost is tremendous. So as far as the positioning of children is concerned, the preterm infants and those who are less than 1 year of age, you can do them in supine position, in topical anesthesia or general anesthesia. The flying baby position is also known for, especially for imaging on the wide field, the Optos. And then children can be made to stand and the machine can be adjusted. The height of the machine can be adjusted, or a height adjustable chair can be used to perform the imaging. Now, the general principles are similar to what is used in adults. For children, we just need to actually counsel the parents. Sometimes they get scared with the insertion of the eye speculum, the contact devices. So you need to explain to them that there may be contact device used, the eyelid and speculums may be inserted and IV access, and that should be cleared. For preterm infants, a nurse or pediatrician or an anesthetic should ideally be available for monitoring. As far as the dose is concerned, both intravenous and oral doses have been reported for performing a fluorescein angiography in children. The doses for most commonly the 20% fluorescein concentration is used at a dose of 0.07 ml per kg, and it can range from to 0.0375 ml per kg for a 20% solution. For the oral, you have to ask the patient to drink the juice rapidly, because otherwise it will cause staining of the teeth. And typically, compared to the intravenous phases of the angiogram, the oral phases will take they'll be delayed, and the choroidal flush may just begin around 2 to 5 minutes, and other phases may be proportionately delayed. So I'll just go through some of the common indications. The first indication is retinopathy of prematurity. The vast majority of ROP diagnosis still remains clinical. However, the role of FFA is increasing with atypical presentations and the use of anti-VEGF therapy. So typically, where would it be indicated? It would be indicated in a zone 1 disease, where we want to see the status of the macular perfusion, in which we can see down below that there is a shunt is there, and you don't see that, you see that the vascularization is limited to zone very posterior, zone 1, and even the macula is not perfused. So here a treatment decision can be made based on the guidance of the fluorescein angiogram. If the macula is not perfused, anti-VEGF therapy would be preferred over laser. And this is the second scenario, wherein we can see that there is a posterior zone 2 avascularity. There is some hemorrhages there. but the posterior vasculature is not showing frank plus disease, or it is not that significant. You're not sure whether you are dealing with hemorrhages or this is a new vascularization. So herein angiography comes in help. It clearly delineates the extent of vascularity. It shows what is happening at the vascular-avascular junction, the flat new vascularization, and it confirms that actually you are dealing with a new vascularization and not a hemorrhage. And then it helps to guide the laser treatment, and you can guide it accordingly. Then the third indication would be with anti-VEGF therapy. Now, this is a case of a zone 1 aggressive posterior ROP treated with anti-VEGF therapy. 5 weeks after presentation, we see that the vasculature has developed. The zone 1, it is better as compared to the presentation. However, the periphery still remains vascular. Now, as the child grows, now this baby is 9 months old, still coming with you for follow-up. Now, we don't know, and it becomes increasingly difficult to examine the periphery. We don't know whether the peripheral retina still has some lurking avascularity, peripheral neovascularization. And therein the fluorescein angiography helps, because it clearly tells you what is the limit of the vascularity, are there any new vessels present, and if they are present, then you take a decision to treat. So it helps to actually guide follow-ups, because you can at least terminate the follow-ups. Otherwise, with anti-VEGF therapy, late recurrences are known, and we don't really know how long to follow up. The second would be familial exudative vitreoretinopathy, a very, very important indication. We know that it is characterized by avascular retina in the periphery, but children may not report symptoms until advanced stages of disease. Often one eye has really progressed to a retinal detachment, and they come with that eye when we have to actually look at the other eye. So progressive neovascularization and complicated retinal detachments can occur. Fluorescein angiography helps in actually characterizing the disease. So this is one patient, a 11-year-old, who's come with complaints of decreased vision in the left eye. And as you can see, that we can see that the typical findings of FEVR, we have a thick epiretinal membrane, there is dragging of the disc, the arcades are narrow, we see peripheral exudation, new vascularization in the left eye. We know that this is FEVR. And but what the right eye, we see the avascularity, but it is the fluorescein angiography which helps to detect these new vascularizations, and then treatment can be guided accordingly. FFA is also helpful in staging cases of FEVR for follow-up also, and even after surgery. Then Coats disease and Leber's-Miller-realisms, which are actually a spectrum of the same pathology. Coats disease, sometimes the fluorescein angiography helps in diagnosis because we see the typical retinal telangiectasias. It helps to detect new vascularization, which may be responsible for the recurrent vitreous hemorrhages, because if it is there, then that can be treated. And sometimes it is confused with other pathologies which have an exudative component. And herein, the fluorescein angiography helps us to make a diagnosis. Pediatric uveitis is another important group where FFA may help us. So there is a whole lot of uveitic entities such as intermediate uveitis, vasculitis, VKH, neuroretinitis, sickle cell retinopathy, and IRWAN, which may affect children. A fluorescein angiography helps to document activity, documents the capillary dropout, new vascularizations, macular edemas, and especially important, the choroidal neovascular membranes. So here is one child who's an 11-year-old. He presents with blurring of vision. Vision is good, 6/9. He has some few cells in the anterior chamber and 1+ vitreous cells. Few snowballs which are seen inferiorly. He does not have any macular edema. The disc looks hyperemic, and that is about it. But this angiography shows us much more than what we can clinically see. So there is bilateral diffuse involvement of the retinal vessels. It shows what type of vessels are involved, that these are small capillaries which are affected. Any peripheral new vascularization is detected, as is seen here. So then accordingly, tailored investigations can be done, and then therapy can be also tailored according to the diagnosis. This is another very important entity. This is an 8-year-old who presents with decreased vision in the right eye since 1.5 years. He's been referred as a proliferative retinopathy. He's counting fingers in the right eye and 6/9 in the left eye. So there is a vitreous hemorrhage and some fibrovascular proliferation, which we can delineate. But it is the left eye which starts telling us something is wrong. We see disc neovascularization, peripheral avascularity, and the fluorescein angiography confirms the diagnosis that apart from the optic disc vascularization, the typical feature is these arteriolar knots, which you are seeing, and the severe 360 degrees capillary dropout. The presence of these arteriolar knots is diagnostic of IR1, and a fluorescein angiography helped in making the diagnosis in this case. Then there are other entities such as Stargardt's disease, where you can see the dark or silent choroid. Choroidal neovascular membranes in BESTs and other vitelliform dystrophies can be picked up with fluorescein angiography. Intraocular tumors has been discussed before, so I will skip them. So this is just a cavernous hemangioma, which was masquerading as a preretinal hemorrhage, and the angiography helped in the diagnosis.
Ma'am, I request you kindly conclude the session.
It's my concluding slide, that the wide field angiography allows imaging of a larger field in a small time, and that is a boon for children. Thank you.